And there he is, live in person, John Furniss. John, welcome so much.
Thank you very much for having me on here. I appreciate the opportunity.
I am so honored that you agreed to talk with us tonight, to our little group of people here, and we all appreciate it. There's been a lot of comments flying around that people were excited to hear from you tonight,
Oh, cool.
and it means a lot to me again that you agreed to talk to me.
Hmm.
I found you through TikTok, as a recommended video, and you know how TikTok works when you start watching a few. I
Yeah.
guess if you watch it all the way through, it suggests more and more, and so I saw more, and then I
Yeah.
checked out your channel and thought, what a fascinating thing. Then I looked you up on YouTube, and you did that talk in Vancouver, I guess it was.
Yeah. Vancouver, Washington.
Yeah, and that's where I learned basically your, well, not your whole story, because I'm sure there's a lot more to it than that, but I learned your story, and
Good bit of.
um, was just more fascinated as I went along. So again, welcome, and
Thank you.
we're going to look at some comments. I'll pull some questions out for folks. I want to remind people that if you do have a question tonight, um, just post your question with the word question, and followed by the question. That
And I'm
sounds
happy to
confusing, but
answer any questions.
very good, very good. So we're going to get to your woodworking skills, which are just phenomenal. I mean, we've seen
Thank you.
that, and I know you're going to show us a few things a little bit later.
Yeah.
So we're excited to see that as well. But we want to talk about what brought you to this point. I mean, kind of the starting point of this story was when you were 16. But I want to ask you to
Mhm.
go back a little further for me, just because um, we're going to talk about mental health,
Yeah.
and it's so common. It's something that a lot of people have not talked about for years. There's still kind of a stigma
Yeah.
associated with people don't want to talk about it.
Yeah.
Um, so I want to know, leading up to age 16,
Hmm.
and maybe it's hindsight, but what was your childhood like? Was it? Do you think it was normal, or do you look back now and say, "Oh my gosh, I always had something
I'd
going on"?
say, I mean, I'd say it was normal in like how I was treated. I mean, I don't. I definitely had some trouble with my peers. I mean, I got bullied by some people and that kind of thing. Um, but I think my main thing was just uncontrolled anxiety. I was always worried about just everything. I was worried about what people thought or what was going to happen to me if I did something or just all those kind of things. Uh, and of course like you said, because of the stigma, I did everything I could to hide it, and I didn't reach out to anybody. And on the other hand of it too, it's the stigma makes it uncomfortable for people to reach out to you and to offer. It's kind of a double-edged sword that, you know there's no handle, it's all blade. you know and
Yeah,
so that was always kind of hard for me. And uh, I just really didn't feel like I fit in. That was kind of tough. Like I didn't identify with a lot of my peers in like I was in Boy Scouts, and I didn't really identify with my peers in that. And I'm really into that kind of thing. I love camping and self sufficiency and all that kind of stuff. I just didn't meld with the people I was with, so to speak. And
right.
when I was 14, 13, going on 14, we moved from the little town we lived in Colorado to a slightly larger town in Wyoming. And it was it was no better for me there, for sure, because I, it's the saying, wherever you go, there you are. Because it's not like I could move away from the issues that I had in my mind and my emotions. They were with me. They came with me. And that was tough to deal with. Trying to find ways to cope and that kind of thing. And I started to be a bit rebellious. And, I
Oh, we got a little free screen freeze there, John.
Oh,
I think you're
hang on.
back.
My
You're
back.
back.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Good.
You were saying you got a little rebellious.
I did. I got a little rebellious. I started smoking cigarettes and drinking and that kind of thing. And of course, that didn't help anything at all.
Right.
And caused lots of tension between me and my parents and stuff. And as it would with anybody.
And not uncommon among young people, right? Like
Absolutely, yeah. Well,
yeah.
and especially in small towns, because there's nothing to do. Really, there's nowhere to go. There's nothing to do, and trouble is easy to find in a place like that.
Hmm. Yeah.
And it's more attractive in a place like that because it's really there's nothing to do, and so that kind of it was sort of an issue, and of course things just kind of built and built until when I was 16, I decided I was done. I didn't want to do it anymore.
Yeah.
And luckily it only took my sight and sense of smell and left my mind totally intact. And I've adapted to blindness so quickly and so well that I really truly believe I'm supposed to be blind. I am supposed to be blind to do what I'm supposed to do on this planet. And call it whatever you want, fate, God, Zeus, luck, whatever. I believe I'm supposed to be here and blind.
Well, you have truly embraced who you are and where you are. I watch your videos, and now talking to you personally a few times,
Mm-hmm.
you're a very happy person. I mean, I don't think you're putting that on for the camera. I think you
No,
really have joy in your life, deep-rooted joy.
I do. I really do. I choose to look at the lighter side of life as much as possible. I mean, of course, it's not 100% of the time. Nobody can do that, but I try to laugh at life as much as possible, and it really helps things go by. Okay, for instance, there's one time I had parked the lawnmower next to the back stairs, and I had forgotten about it. And I had the dog out with me, and he went off to the side real quick, so I kind of followed him. And I ran into the lawnmower sideways and hit my leg on it. And I did what I can only describe as a midair barrel roll over the lawnmower, landed flat on my back on the other side of the lawnmower, legs sticking up in the air. and I just the image of that went through my mind, and I was laughing so hard it took me a minute to get up off the ground. I honestly wish someone had been there to see it, because it just and I could have chosen to get really upset about that, but what's the point?
Yes, you could have for sure.
Yeah,
So, let me go back just a sec then.
yeah, of
So,
course.
when you again, age 16 was
Hmm.
your suicide
Yeah,
attempt.
yeah.
Um,
And
how many days was it? Like, were you unconscious for a time? Like, did you come out of it and realize what had
well,
happened? And
I was in the hospital for about a month, and the first couple of weeks I was pretty out of it because of brain swelling, and they had me on massive amounts of painkillers because I mean, for one, they had to do a craniotomy surgery where they opened up my head and fixed things, and or as best as they could anyway. And so they didn't want me moving around a lot, so they had me like very heavily drugged. So the first week and a half or so was kind of patchy and mainly just hallucinations. um, and I didn't I when I started to kind of come back to reality is when they told me that I was going to be blind, that that it was 100% blind, and uh, they weren't quite sure about my sense of smell. Honestly, I think they were sure about my sense of smell, but they didn't want to kick me while I was down, kind of thing. Um,
Yeah. Oh,
And
by the
so
way, you can't smell either.
yeah, and that was tough too, because
Mm,
food didn't taste the same. uh I mean, smell is an important part of life, and
right.
even safety wise, you know what I mean, like because of fire and stuff like that. But
Absolutely. That's true. I hadn't thought of that. But
yeah,
gosh, if your lathe catches on fire, you need to,
or
well,
I don't I've never wanted gas appliances, because what if the house fills up with gas,
yeah,
and,
right.
kind of thing. So there's that aspect of it. But it it didn't the really interesting thing about it, like I mean, it definitely hit me hard then, and I think I almost came back at it as a challenge. Like, I'm still here, and I got to keep going. So I'm gonna stare it down the barrel, and like I said, I adapted very quickly. 1 month after I got out of the hospital, I changed the rear wheel bearings in my old car by myself, because I had helped my dad do the same job when I was growing up, and I just remembered every
Right.
little bit about it. And I could see it in front of me. Like, I like to say I have a computer design program in my mind, and one of
Yeah.
the things that I do experience is called Charles Bonnet syndrome, and it's visual hallucinations, and it's not due to any brain damage or malfunction or anything like that. It happens to people that have had vision and become blind, and they think it's like your visual cortex's way of keeping itself busy because it doesn't have anything else to do. It's not very well understood, and uh, for me, it's like it's colors and shapes, and they kind of move and shift around. um, and I've been able to make that the background, so to speak. Think of it like the wallpaper on your desktop, and then
Yeah.
I can imagine anything I want over the top of that. And that's been an enormous, blessing for me, and I'm really lucky about that too, because I'm one of about 3 or 4% of people that experience this, that not only are not disturbed by it, but it is actually useful to them. I mean, there's some people that they think they're going crazy, and there's other
Right.
people that they've been told what it is, they know what it is, but the images they see are very disturbing
Oh,
and
wow.
terrible. So I'm very lucky in those respects. Um, and so that has really aided me, because like I said, I've been able to very clearly visualize, like, when I'm familiar with my surroundings, I can point things out.
Right.
For instance, the town I grew up in, uh, I moved back there after. So the next few years I was in high school, and I kind of went back and forth between sober and not. And then when I graduated high school, I made a horrible, horrible decision and moved back to the little town I grew up in. And there's a few reasons I moved back there. Like, for one, I'm familiar with it, like so familiar with it,
Yeah.
I can literally be sitting in a car and point out the sights as we're driving around town.
Hmm.
And and the people, and also I wanted to use drugs again, and that was a place where I knew I could just do whatever I wanted to freely. But I ended up getting into dealing drugs, and I got busted and put on probation, and got a felony charge on my record. Luckily, and this was back in 2001, and just in December of 2019, I was finally able to get a gubernatorial pardon from the governor of the state of Colorado.
Oh, good. Good.
Yeah, yeah, that's the that process should be a lot simpler for a lot more people. That's a whole other
Yeah.
conversation in its own. But uh,
Well, I don't want to compliment you for dealing drugs, but to do that while blind is really pretty impressive, I have to say. I mean, gosh,
yeah,
I don't know how you would do that.
I don't know. I knew the town. I knew the people. I guess that's kind of how it started.
But there could be a cop right in front of you, John.
Well, a lot of people don't really suspect a blind guy either.
Yeah, yeah. No,
You know,
it's good cover, right?
Well, and honestly, I don't know. I mean,
Yeah.
I kept up to my bad ways.
Yeah.
You know, I was on probation and I kept using drugs and pardon me. And eventually, it came up and bit me for sure. I was using meth and
Yeah.
cocaine
Wow.
really heavily, and and I was living in some pretty seedy boarding houses and stuff. Just not great. I mean, honestly, the one of the places I was living, the place that I was living at when this happened that I'm about to tell you, I actually thought it was condemned when I was growing up. I mean, it was that shabby.
Wow.
Um, and I ended up getting a sinus infection that was so bad that I actually had to have some surgeries to get rid of it. I went to, they, they sent me to a hospital in Denver that really, I'm very lucky I made it out of there alive and without, they didn't get rid of the infection. They gave me a secondary infection, but I was lucky not to catch some much more serious infections because they had me in a room with three other people, one of which had inactive tuberculosis, and we all shared the same bathroom.
Wow.
So I was real. They were letting me smoke cigarettes, and I had just had a surgery for a sinus infection that could have killed me.
Wow.
So, long story short, I they sent me home. I and of course, since they didn't get rid of the infection, it came back with a vengeance, and
Mm.
like so bad that like I actually have a carbon fiber prosthetic plate for a forehead, all the way eyebrows to hairline, temple to temple,
Mm.
and it was because the bone had been infected, and they had to remove all of that, and so I went without that bone for a full year, so that my body could heal well enough to get the prosthetic plate put in. And then luckily I got the plate put in, and I know that some sort of providence was looking out for me again because the doctors told me that anyone else they had seen that it was that bad that they had catastrophic brain damage or they were dead. They said that they had never any other case that they had seen or heard of that was what had happened. And they said the
Wow.
only reason they can think of that didn't happen to me was the scar tissue from when I shot myself,
How about
protecting
that?
my
And
brain.
they did a great job. I mean,
Thank you.
you're a handsome guy, John.
Thank you.
You know, they did a really nice job.
They
Hey,
they did
I just
full,
realized something.
yeah, go ahead.
I don't- Not to change the subject here. I just realized something that
Mhm.
you can't see these comments that are on the screen. So I want to go through some of these as
Yeah,
well.
yeah, for
And
sure.
also to the viewers out there, I just want to say, you know, lest you don't understand my humor, John and I talked, and he said it's okay to joke around a little bit. So
It is. It is. It is. It's funny. Tell blind people telling blind jokes to each other at a blind school. It's great.
yeah, that is funny. But
Yeah.
can I tell a blind joke, or is that wrong? You know, that's
Yeah, sure. I love a good blind joke. I'll
yeah. No,
tell.
I just wasn't. I wasn't sure if that was like, you know, you don't know what's appropriate, and I
Yeah.
think that's one thing that when we talk about the stigma of mental illness, about suicide, people
Mhm.
don't know how to talk about it, and that's,
But
you know, we talk
I'll,
about blindness,
yeah,
I mean, John knows he's blind, so we can talk about it. I mean,
yeah.
it's
I'll tell you a
so.
couple of jokes so everybody is comfortable. How's that
Okay,
sound?
then I'll put some comments on the screen so people can see that we're going to interact with their comments. But yeah, go ahead. That's
Okay.
good.
Okay. So there's all these people sitting on a plane. They're waiting for the pilots to get on, and the pilots come on, and one's wearing sunglasses and has a white cane, and the other one's got a guide dog and sunglasses, and everybody's like, "Oh, these blind guys, you know, having fun with us." But they go up and into the cockpit, and they close the door, and the engines start going, and they start going down the runway faster and faster, and everybody sees they're about to go off the end of the runway into the water, and they all start screaming. But right then, the plane lifts up into the air just fine, and there's no problem, and everybody thinks, oh, okay, I guess everything's fine. And meanwhile, up in the cockpit, one of the pilots says to the other one, you know, Bob, one of these days they're going to scream too late and we're all going to die.
I love it.
And
Hey,
one
well
more.
then, yeah.
I see, said the blind man as he peed into the wind. It's all coming back to me now.
You know, John, my blind friend, he couldn't learn to read Braille. He just wasn't feeling it.
Uh-huh. I like it.
All right. Anyway, so some of these comments, I just want
Yeah,
to acknowledge that people really appreciate that you're here. I've got one here from Matt saying, I've seen many videos of John. He does amazing work. I do some woodworking myself on a lathe and couldn't imagine doing it blind. He loves watching your content. And that is from Matt.
Thank you, Matt.
Question here from Matt. We'll get to this a little bit later on. He's asking, do you sell your artwork? And yes, you do. There's a website, and we're going to share that. But you and your wife are both artists, but you do sell your artwork. I know you told me that it sells out quickly, so we'll talk about that soon too.
Yeah.
But you do. I've got a comment here from Chris over at the Watershed Outlook, and he said that suicide has impacted our family several times. Each one a young person, not yet at a full adult, usually with related substance issues. Can't thank you enough for sharing your story, John. So much appreciated in there.
You're very welcome.
And Arnie is saying that he does not think it's worth analyzing the past. So
I have a saying I like to say, hindsight is 20/20, and it can kiss my butt while it's back there.
That's a good one. That is great.
Thank you.
John from Ritterbit will do, one of our friends out here, says you have an amazing attitude and toward your life and your circumstances.
Thank you.
And I'll just look through a little bit more here as well. I want to thank you. There is a question here, and I'm glad that Linda's asking this, because I was going to ask you myself. Is there a significance to that necklace that you wear? Because we see that on all your videos.
Yes. I have not taken this off for the last 23 years. Or actually 22 years. This is called a manaya, or also referred to as a whalebone. It's a Maori token of protection. And my brother, he was down in Australia, and he had befriended a Maori gentleman, and his friend gave it to him, and then my brother gave it to me when I became blind. And I've worn this thing ever since I was. It was about 2 years after I became blind that I started wearing it, and it's been on this same cord for the last 21 years.
Wow! And is it actually made from whalebone?
It is, yeah. The ritual is they go down to the beach and they feel around in the sand, because they're, historically many whales have beached on the around there in New Zealand, and so they decay and their bones are in the sand, and so they feel through the sand and find a bone, and then they carve it and boil it and cure it more or less, and bless it, and then it's made to be given away.
And it was given to your brother, who gave it to you. Is that correct?
Yeah. And it's a symbol of protection, and I really feel like it has.
Are they all generally carved in that same shape? Is that what the?
From what I understand, they are generally unique to the person.
Okay.
Or yeah, I'm not really. This is the only one I've ever come across, but I've had lots of people. I'll never forget. I called a cab in Salt Lake City once, and the guy that was driving it was Maori, and he saw me walking up, and he's like, "Oh, you going to Whalebone?"
He knew it. He knew right away, huh?
Yeah. He's a really cool.
Awesome.
He's a really nice guy named Kiwi.
Are you old enough to remember the Brady Bunch?
Oh yeah.
Do you remember the episode where they went to Hawaii and they found that little figure? Only that one was bad luck, not good luck. It was like a
kind of. That's been a long time. But.
Okay, all right. Those of us who are a little older would remember that. I also want to remind folks, and thank you, Chris, for this reminder, that I was able to connect a nonprofit organization for donations to this live stream. And John and Annie, his wife, mentioned NAMI, which is the National Alliance for Mental Illness. They have a local chapter there in Washington State, but I could only link the national chapter here. So There is a link on the YouTube page where you can click and donate to NAMI. I think on Facebook there might be one as well, but I can see on the YouTube page we've already raised $240 for NAMI, and
That's
I
awesome.
really think that's fantastic. So thank you to everyone who has contributed to that. And is that an organization that you worked with or that you do work with for mental health or therapy or counseling?
Actually, they have approached us recently to do some videos about mental health. So
Great.
that's how we're connected with them, at least. Yeah, that Annie may have known about them, but I'm not tech savvy in any way, shape, or form. Annie does all the social media, all the website, all that stuff, because I really, outside of my smartphone, which is one of the best things for blind people since Braille was invented, I really am not computer literate.
Right.
So that's why we make
And
such a good team, Annie and I.
for sure, and she does a great job with the TikTok videos, which
Yeah,
again is how many of us found you. You've got almost 2 million followers on TikTok, which is amazing. And
yeah.
again, you know, you're kind of the on-camera star, but I know how much work it takes for Annie and the
Yeah.
behind the scenes to put those together,
So,
even though they're 1 minute video or whatever. It's a lot
yeah,
of work. So she does a great job,
yeah,
and she has her own career and
yeah,
art that she does. So
yeah,
that's a
yeah.
lot.
She does her own art, painting and sculpting a lot recently. We've been collaborating on some projects and stuff like that. Uh, yeah. So,
Great. And there's another comment here from Allison saying
uh-huh.
how incredible of you to share your journey. May all of your days be happy days. And again, you
Thank you.
are a happy person. We love to see that. So what are we missing here? So we're at
Okay.
this point now,
Mm-hmm.
briefly, because I don't want to make you move quickly here, but I don't want this to go too
Oh yeah,
late. But uh, we mentioned Annie, and how you met Annie was at a school for the blind.
yeah. Well,
And you did something kinda dumb. You wanna talk about that?
yeah. Okay. So there's a slight, just a little bit of the story between then, and that's when
Okay,
I
yeah.
discovered woodworking. It was so my parents, took me in after the whole infection thing, and they had never, you know, like shunned me or anything like that. It was my choice to move away from them, and they helped me get off of drugs and get off probation. And then that was when I discovered a blind school. I worked with vocational rehab, and they had a school attached to it, and that is where I discovered woodworking, and that's what totally changed my life, was discovering woodworking, because um, I wasn't able to find a job because I'm good with my hands but not with computers. So as a blind person, that means there's not much in the.
Well, we froze up one more time on my end here. So while we're waiting for John to unfreeze, I wanna, again, thank you for watching. I also wanna mention on the bottom of the screen, I've got a little banner running there. There's a new national helpline. If you're struggling or, in crisis, a suicide hotline, you just dial 988. It's like 911, only it's 988. Or you can use the website 988 uh,
Oh, my bad.
lifeline.org. So, yeah, John, I was just telling folks
Oh,
about the 988 lifeline that they can dial for uh, suicide prevention or any
yeah.
struggling or crisis. It's scrolling on the bottom of the screen, and I was just filling in because you froze on us for a little bit while there.
Oh,
There,
yeah. No
so
worries. So
so you were
where's.
telling us how your parents
Oh,
took you
okay.
back in, and take it from there.
Okay. So my parents took me back in and helped me. They had never shunned me or anything like that. It was my choice to move away, and they took me back in and helped me get off drugs and get off probation. And I started working with vocational rehab about that time, and they had this school attached to their program, and part of that, you could take a woodshop class, and I decided to take that class. Pardon me. Take that class, and it totally changed my life. I mean, it set me on the course. And I didn't have much luck with vocational rehab because I'm good with my hands but I don't know computers, and that's where most employment lays for blind people, is computers. And most places that you'd work with your hands are inherently dangerous, and so that just wasn't an option. Not to mention, I'm a blind felon, or was a blind felon, so they wouldn't even give me the time of day.
Mm.
So for a couple of years, I just kind of I had become really close friends with the woodshop teacher, and he retired. So for the next couple of years, we just kind of hung out and woodworked. Now his father-in-law, who was also blind, came up here to Vancouver, Washington, to a piano tuning and repair school, and it's specifically for the blind, and it's the only one of its kind in the world for the blind. And that seemed like it was right up my alley because most of repairing a piano is fine-tuned woodworking. So I looked it up and came up here in 2011. And in 2012, I was there doing extra classes because they taught tuning and just basic repair. And I'm not a great tuner, but I'm a great mechanic. And so they were teaching me how when I was done with school there, I did full rebuilds, new strings, new hammers, new everything. And so I was, Annie happened to be there painting a piano for, she was a volunteer for a program that they do every year for a fundraiser. And she happened to be working in the same workroom where I was working on a different piano. And of course, first thing that happens when I walk in, hand in the wet paint, like an iron bar to a magnet. it just is gonna happen. And luckily I didn't poke out Mona Lisa's eye or anything like that. She was just priming it. So a nice little meet cute, you know.
Right.
And so we worked basically in the same workroom for a while, and then so we had kind of gotten to know each other. And the art project was over, and she called me because I'm kind of like George McFly when it comes to approaching women, or was. So and you know, just not real confident, and so I didn't call her. She called me, and she called me up and asked me if I wanted to go do something. And I told her I'd have to call her back. I was busy right at the moment. Really what it was is I was broke. I had no money. So I was trying to think of what we could do. And at the time, my friend and I had rented a couple of garden plots at our local community center. And I had this patch of peas that needed to be harvested. And the way that I would grow peas wasn't like little individual trellises. I would make this like spider web of twine that I'd weave all across the patch about a foot off the ground, and it would make this like hedge of peas. That's the only way I can describe it.
Yeah.
And so there were hundreds of peas that needed to be harvested, and I knew that was right up her alley. So I called her up and asked her if she wanted to, and that was our first date. And we ended up getting married in front of that same garden plot 3 years later.
In the pea patch. That's great.
Yeah, in the pea patch. And she has been a huge part of my journey. And I mean, not just the love of my life, but she's been an enormous supporter. And for instance, I needed $12,000 or I needed $15,000 to buy all my piano rebuild equipment. And she did a fundraiser for me and got me $16,000. And so
Nice.
I was able to buy all my piano rebuild stuff. And you know, obviously I don't rebuild pianos anymore, but and that's because I loved learning about pianos because I love mechanics and physics and all that kind of stuff. However, I also like things to change and be new and interesting. And once you've learned all the ins and outs of a piano, every piano is the same 11,000 parts. And so it's just extremely repetitive, and I just couldn't see myself doing it anymore. And so my piano business kind of tanked. And it was hard to get rebuild business too, because it costs several $1,000s to do a comprehensive rebuild on a piano. And you could buy a really nice piano for several $1,000s. but so it was mainly like family heirlooms and stuff like that I was
Yeah,
working.
yeah. It's a pretty specialized audience for that.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, like a piano that needs new strings, new hammers, and the half a dozen things that come along with a piano that old. That's like $8,000 worth of work. And so that's most people can't really do that. Um, and so that kind of tanked, and so I kind of drifted for a little bit. And Annie knew that woodworking was really where my skills and my passion are. And so in 2016, she bought me my lathe for my birthday. And the lathe has always been my favorite. I started, turning on a lathe really not long after I started woodworking about 16 years ago. And so that's where my professional career started. And Annie is all she likes to say she's my biggest fan, and that's definitely true. And I'm her biggest
Well,
fan.
we can all see that on the TikTok videos. I mean, you guys are so nice to each other. I mean, it's like you're just so sweet to each other. And I don't think you're faking it. I think that's
No,
not just for the camera,
we
but
found we found
you
our
can see
people.
it.
Yeah, we
You can
found our
see it.
people. And she,
She's got some comments on here. I know she's I guess
oh,
she's watching from the other room, but
oh, cool,
hopefully she's blushing over there as well. But folks are
good.
saying, that she's what was the one comment I just saw here? She's amazing. This is
She
from
is
Bob Purrs. John, she is amazing, as are you, and saying thank you. There is a question here, since we're getting into the woodworking part here.
absolutely.
Chris has a question mentioning that you create beautiful work,
Hmm.
um, and uh, and is clearly technically a good woodworker. The
Hmm.
question is, were you creative prior to your suicide attempt and prior to becoming blind?
I have always been interested in artwork and in craftsmanship in general. Like I've always admired fine woodworkers. I've always really brew. I used to brew my own beer. I'd love to do it again sometime. I love to bake. I love to create things from scratch. It's one of my favorite things to do, and I've always wanted to be. I always wanted to end up as some sort of a craftsman, and woodworking is definitely there. And I had done some really kind of simple sort of woodworking beforehand, like uh, well, and I mean, not to say simple, I mean more different. Like I did a little bit of like carpentry type stuff, like build a toy box out of 2x4s or help fix a porch or something like that, which I mean, that takes a whole different set of skills in and of itself, but it's not the same kind of thing I do now.
Right. But you were
I
always, it sounds like you were always somewhat mechanically inclined.
Yeah, yeah,
And
absolutely. I grew up helping my dad work on cars and all that kind of thing. Uh, so I've always been interested in it, but as far as fine woodworking goes, that's after I became blind.
right, right. Okay. Hey, and shout out to the person who decided to have a woodworking school for the blind. I mean, that just makes me nervous to think, hey, woodworking tools, blind people, sharp objects. That sounds like a good idea, right?
You would be amazed at how wide a community of blind woodworkers there are.
Is that right?
Really, there's a very large community of blind woodworkers. And the main difference between sighted and blind woodworkers, other than, one of them can see and the other can't, is the way that we measure.
Hmm.
And this here is my tactile measuring device. This opens up the entire shop for me. And it's basically a finely machined bolt. I'm not sure how good the resolution is, but if you can see, there's a tab every half inch along the shank. And
It looks
then
like a
this
notch,
nut,
right?
it, what's that?
It looks like a notch every so many
It's actually
inches.
a raised tab every half inch.
Okay.
And then this wide rectangular shaped
Can you hold it
nut.
up a little bit higher there, John? There you go.
Yeah,
Thank
there we
you.
go. So every turn of that nut is 1/16 of an inch. And then I can lock
One
it down
one
and
full 360-degree turn.
yep, one full turn is 1/16 of an inch. And then
Okay.
each tab is a half inch. And so I'm more accurate with this than I ever was with the tape measure when I could see. And it unlocks. I mean, I can set the table saw and make cuts accurate down to a 32nd of an inch using this measuring device.
Wow.
Um,
Now, was that designed for blind people, or would
it
anybody
it
else use that?
was, yeah, it
Okay.
was, or anybody can use it. Honestly, um, I could see a great utility for it, even for a sighted woodworker, because once you get your measurement and you lock it down, you've got this nice square straight edge where you know you're square and you're straight and true, and you can use this to push it into place, and you never have to worry about a bending tape measure or not being
Right.
square, that kind of thing. And but it was made by a company called Science Supplies for the Blind, and unfortunately the patent expired, and I bought one of the last few in existence. However, since the patent expired, anybody can make them now.
Right.
And I've even thought about possibly finding a machine shop that would make them so I could sell them. But
Yeah, it looks like a piece of all thread with a nut and a
yeah,
threaded plate on it. It's
that's more or less what it is.
yeah.
And there are other tactile measuring devices out there. There's one called a click rule that's basically the next best thing. However, basically picture this inside of like a tube, and then there's a ratchet system in there. So each time it goes out and clicks each one. It's only accurate down to a 16th of an inch, and there's a little bit of play in it too. So, but next to this, a click rule is really the next best thing.
Right.
And until I moved up here, I built everything I had before with a click rule. But this is more durable and more accurate.
Nice.
And
I'm going to show a little one of your TikTok videos, which
okay.
shows one of the bowls that you made.
Speaking of which, I got some right here if you'd like me to.
Okay, let me play this little clip here, and then we'll look at that.
That sounds good. Look at what I made. This is a picnic table salad bar. I had a big slab of black walnut, so I thought to myself, I could make a combination salad bowl with a wide rim for all the toppings. Make a nice little salad bar. So here it is.
Beautiful. So yeah, let's see what you have there, John.
All right, so this is a bowl this bowl was 80 individual pieces of wood I put together. And it took me about a week of labor.
Beautiful. Now that's light wood and dark wood, so there must be walnut in there and maybe
actually
birch
it's the light wood is maple, soft maple, and the dark wood is a wood called padauk.
And I have heard you say that Annie does help you pick out the woods for these, right?
She does. She'll help me separate them out. So she'll tell me which board is padauk, or when I start out, because it's just rough lumber, and then I actually have a tool I use to mark the pieces. So for instance, on this one, all the dark pieces, I put a mark in the end of each one of those. Pardon me. And the maple was just clear. And so that way I knew, that I was getting the alternating pieces.
Right.
And then I'll sometimes use solid pieces like this one here. This is ash.
One solid piece.
Yeah. And then let's see here. I've got this piece here. And
wow, look at that.
This one may possibly be displayed at the Washington State School for the Blind as a tactile exhibit, specifically for people to feel. We'll see. Hopefully
so. This might be a common question for you, though.
Mm-hmm.
With these bowls, do you use that measuring device to figure out the thickness of the walls of the bowl? Like, how do you not blow through the wall of the bowl when you're using your lathe?
Well, I actually feel the bowl as I'm carving. It's you're not really supposed to do that, but if I didn't, it would look like some blind guy made it. So, you know.
You don't want
But
that.
I've come up with a technique where I'm relatively safe when I do it, and so that's pretty much how I do that. That's not to say though that I have not cut the side off of many a bowl on accident.
Mm-hmm.
However, when I do that, Annie and I we combined our skills, and she'll so she'll use the rim of the bowl to make like kind of a shadow box, so to speak. Um, and like for instance, she made one recently where she put two little sculpted mushrooms in there. And then on the flat part of the bowl that the side was cut off of, she will paint a picture or put a sculpture on there or something like that. So, you know, it's frustrating, but it
Goes
all
to good
works out.
use, right?
Yeah, exactly.
It's upcycling, they call that, right?
Yeah, exactly. An unintended design alteration.
That's right. Now,
Yeah.
there is a question here from Arnie asking if you have
Uh-huh.
any special safety devices on your lathe.
No, not really. There's not. I don't really know how you could, to tell the truth.
Mm-hmm.
The lathe. I mean, with a table saw or something like that, you've got a fence that you follow, or those kind of things, and so you more or less know where to keep yourself to keep out of the way. But
Right.
with a lathe, you just got the tool rest, your chisel, and your project, and so you just kind of have to learn where to go and what to do and how to do it. It's
Yeah.
the lathe is one of those things that the one good way to really get good at it is to use it. There's so many different variables in your chisels and your wood and the speed and all that.
Right. Just use it. Here's a question, and we could talk
Mhm.
about your website and your products. This is a
Absolutely.
great transition to that. Linda's asking if you have any more honey pots coming. I've seen those on your website, and I know you told me privately that they're pretty a lot of work. So
There
talk about those
will
honey
be
pots, would you?
there will be some coming up. We're going to do 4 large holiday restocks on the store. And there will be a couple of those restocks that will have some honey pots. So keep your eye out. And our website always has our next repost date posted very clearly in several places.
And that's furnissstudios.com, right?
Yes,
That's
absolutely. And you can get either of our work there. You can buy my work or Annie's. Mine is generally sold out except for stickers and T-shirts sometimes. And then Annie, she's got like her paintings and stuff like that generally sell out right away too. But she usually has she keeps prints and cards and things like that available.
right. Right.
Yeah.
Technical question about your bowls. The finish
Mhm.
on those, is it like an oil rub? Are they food grade bowls or are they just
They are
decorative?
they are food grade. I use
Okay.
it's a butcher block wax combination. It's beeswax, carnauba wax, orange lemon, and mineral oil all mixed together into a kind of a nice paste, and it works pretty good. It does have to be reapplied, but they honestly, the only food grade finish that doesn't have to be reapplied often is shellac, and
Mm.
it's still not much better. Honestly, it'll still, so
Shellac is food grade?
it is shellac.
How about
They
that?
actually coat hard candies in shellac to keep the moisture from making them go gooey.
Interesting.
Yeah,
Interesting.
yeah.
Hmm.
Uh, so that's yeah. And the other part of it too is a permanent finish. I'd have to, close down my shop more or less. I can't have any dust, and
Right.
since this
Right.
is what we do for a living, I can't really do that. So
Right. Right. Are you now bowls are obviously your specialty, lathe work. Do
hmm
you have other work or do you have aspirations for other
I
types of
have
projects, or are you really committed to that lathe? Is that where you found
uh,
your passion?
that's my passion really. I've done some tables and stuff in the past and lamps. And I always try to incorporate the lathe into any project I do. But maybe at some point in the future, I might make an end table or something like that again. And occasionally I do turn out a lamp. Uh, but I also make canisters. I make salt cellars with, like the little ones you put on your counter with the loose fitting lid, and
Oh
then
yeah.
I make canisters that have like an airtight lid that you could keep, keep rosemary or something like that in there. Keep your herbs, or it's actually is airtight and will keep it sealed.
Right.
Also, I designed a smartphone amplifier right from scratch. It's my own design, 100%. And there are other, passive amplifiers out there, but the ones I make are my own design, 100%.
Oh, I see. So it's like a box or
It's a
or
oh they've all sold. It's a special bowl where the rim of the bowl is curved over, sort of like think of a car tire without the rim in it.
Mhm.
And then there's a post in the middle and kind of a dome in the middle in the bottom. So think of it like an amphitheater or
Right. Right.
yeah, they work quite well. And Andy's looked all over the internet and stuff. Nobody makes a design that's anything close to what I make. They're
That's
all
interesting.
different. Yeah,
At
I
first,
use
I thought you were pulling my leg because you said you're not computer savvy, and then you talked about a smartphone amplifier. And I'm thinking something electronic. Like, wait a minute, where's he
no,
going with this? But now I
fully
get it now.
acoustic. I used my knowledge of like how speakers and speaker boxes are built, and what I learned of acoustics when I was learning to rebuild pianos and stuff like that, and just kind of put it together and came up with something pretty good.
That's awesome. Hey, we're going to take a break right now and do the sticker giveaway tonight.
There you go.
And I'm going to do, I've got a number of stickers here that I give away each week. And today I'm going to give away the whole pack of them, which includes a bumper sticker and the 3 other ones. So I'm going to give those away. Folks who have watched the show before know that I'll put a word up and they're going to put it in the live chat exactly the way I post it. And then a random comment picker will pick it. Now, you're also going to supply, I think you had some stickers that say
Yeah,
the Blind Woodsman.
yeah, they've
And
got my logo.
great. So you're going to win those too. What we're going to do is when you email me the winner, I'm going to forward that to John and Annie, and they'll send you some stickers as well. So this is a big win tonight. Also, no limitations. If you won before, you can enter to win again because this is the whole pack of them. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to put this word up on the screen, which I did not. Let's see. I need to share the screen here a second. Share screen. And just have to find it. Oh, see, I was so prepared. I always forget to do this part.
I do that kind of stuff too.
There it is. Okay. So we mentioned that the nonprofit that we're collecting for, which is up to $260 now, is NAMI. So I'm just going to have folks type in the live chat hashtag NAMI, NAMI. Type that exactly the way you see it in the live chat. It can be uppercase or lowercase, but make sure it's hashtag no space NAMI. We'll collect some entries and then we'll cut it off. There was a question last week that someone posted about when I clicked the random draw button. They were seeing people in the comments congratulating the winner even before it was shown on the screen. So I did reach out to the company and they said there's sometimes a lag with the video. So, you know, be aware that your vote is being counted, or it's they're all being counted. So you may see people saying, "Hey, congratulations, so and so," and I didn't even click the button yet, but that's something to do with video lag. But all the entries are going in there, so I hope the person who asked me about that is watching tonight and entered as well. So we'll cut it off here in just a moment. I'm going to check out the comments. And then we'll wrap up here in just a few minutes. I did have well, I'll ask you these questions after the person wins because I have a couple questions. Again, going back to mental health, and I'm going to get some deep thoughts from you and some advice for folks. So let's draw this winner first. And as soon as I see this number jump up one more time, I'm going to hit draw and we'll see who wins, who's the big winner tonight. I usually have some background music playing, but there it is. All right, I'm going to click right now, see who wins. I hope Annie entered. That'd be fun. The winner is tonight Richard Klump. Congratulations, Richard. I think Richard won once before recently. So congratulations, Richard. I'm going to collect your email address, or actually, you're going to email me. Let me put this up on the screen. And so, Richard Klump, here's what you need to do. Email me at contactmcgtv@gmail.com. And I'll get your address. I'll send you out mine. I'll forward your mailing address to John and Annie, and they'll send you a couple stickers from John, the blind woodsman, and his whatever he has there. So that's great. So what I want to ask you, John, as soon as I lose this screen here. So I'm going to ask you for some advice for someone who is feeling like they don't fit in, someone who may be having feelings of suicide, because I do have some stats here. So before you answer that question, let me just mention that this is what I found online. Suicide is the second leading cause of death among young people aged 10 to 24. So it's pretty serious for our youth. And, obviously you were 16 right there in that time. And on top of that, our youth, our LGBTQ youth are 4 times as likely to attempt suicide than their peers. And of that LGBTQ youth, 45% have seriously considered it. That's almost half. That is a lot. So my first question for you is, what do you say to them if they're watching here tonight? What can you tell them as someone who's a survivor?
One of the things that has really helped me is to try and keep in mind that everything changes eventually. If you can hold on, if you can ride out those rapids, then eventually it can, it'll change. And to try and it helps to go with the flow. A lot of times it really does. Sometimes you have to do something and there's just no other way, and you just have to sometimes you get dragged along. But if you go with the flow, it's easier for you to decide which patch of the beach you want to get off on when you finally get your bearings again. And so you can be affected by change, or you can affect change. And I know it's so hard when you're down at the bottom of that well and you're looking up and you can hardly even see any light at all. And just remember that there are people out there. You can reach out. It might be uncomfortable, but the more people start to reach out to give help as much as to get help, it will help. It will make that stigma start to go away. It'll make people realize that everybody hurts and that it's okay to not be okay. It's just something that everybody feels. Emotions are there for a reason. It's what makes us human. And it's not emotions themselves are not inherently good or bad. It's what we do with them. There's a TikTok video Tom Hanks did recently, and I love it, and it goes right along with what we're saying. What I'm saying is, are things terrible? You can't see what's good in life right now. Just wait. Is it raining? Is it dark outside? Just wait. Are you on top of the world and everything's going your way and everything's aces? Just wait. And it's so true that
That's
life,
right. That everything changes, right? Good or bad.
kind of comes at you, and you have to be on your toes and deal with it as it comes towards you. And to just hang on. That's really the biggest thing. To just hang on. You can do it. And like me personally, I still have a lot of trouble thinking back on things that just don't bear thinking about. And so, and one of the and I'll kind of like stumble into those thoughts sometimes. And so one of the things I do is I tell myself, okay, stop right now and think back into the line of thoughts that led you here. Because it's like, one thought relates to another memory, so on and so forth down the line. And so I'll back up to where it started, and I'll see things for what they are. And it's like, okay, I got turned down the wrong road, but now I'm back on the main street. Let's keep cruising.
That's
And
great.
that has helped me a lot. And you know, Annie has taught me a lot too about mental health, because she's had her struggles, and we've helped each other quite a bit through the years. And she is an amazing person, really. I would not be who I am today without her. And I don't know, I feel very blessed that I found my person.
We all love Annie.
She's she's great.
let,
And
let,
yeah.
let me ask you a deep question then.
Yeah.
Deep dive here, John.
Mm-hmm.
Are you at a point where you can say that you love yourself?
Yes, I am. I definitely, it took a long time to get there. It really did. It took a long time to come to peace with blindness. It's kind of interesting when we were talking earlier about, like, when I realized I was going to be blind and that kind of thing. Yes, it definitely affected me pretty heavily then, but it hit me the hardest about 12 years in. And it was really interesting. I've been talking with my friend, and we were talking about an actress in this movie. And we couldn't remember if she had blue eyes or green eyes. And later on that day, I was thinking to myself, I'm going to have to watch that movie and see what color eyes she has. And the thought was it was almost like it was a thought from someone else. And then right on the heels of that was, no, I'm not. I'm never going to see anything ever again. And that hit me like a 10-ton wrecking ball.
Wow.
It really did. That hit me so hard. And I'm glad it hit me then and not at first. Because after 12 years, I had developed the tools I needed to be able to deal with something that heavy. If it had hit me that hard right at first, I don't know that I'd have been able to overcome it.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you a follow-up question then, and we've gone over 8 p.m. There's no limits here, but I want to ask you if you're okay for time here.
Absolutely. No, I'm good to go.
I realize you're 3 hours ahead of us too, so you still have maybe some sunlight there. But thank you for that.
Mm-hmm.
But I think this is important. So the other question would be, what would you tell people? What would you tell me if I have someone in my life who possibly is contemplating suicide or has mental health issues? What do you tell people who experience this in their lives and their families?
Well, definitely try to to reach out a bit, and not even so far as saying, I think you're suicidal or depressed, or maybe even just as much as like, hey, let's go hang out. You seem like you could use a day out in the sunshine, or anything like that. Because if you approach it in the way of like, I think you're suicidal, that's really heavy for people, for one. And because of the stigma, that can immediately make someone deny it or hide it. And so just be attentive, just reach out, just show that compassion and concern, and just that they are valued to you.
And I guess you know, to make it clear that it's not easy. That, you know, if you look back and say, well, could anybody have done anything, or what could they have done? That
Yeah,
may have helped you if you had a little more outreach. But you know, people shouldn't feel guilty if their outreach isn't accepted either. That's difficult too.
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. That's the tough part of it too, is that they have to be ready to accept, and that's why I say to approach it in a kind of a more roundabout way. You know what I mean? Like a oh, I don't know. It's I like to tell jokes when I first, like when I start doing a talk or something like that at a school. I like to tell a joke because it cracks the ice. You know,
Right.
it gets them comfortable, and everybody's in a nice, relaxed, receptive mood, and we can just all hang out and talk. You know, and that's when real things happen. You know, that's when just real progress gets made. That's when people realize, hey, I do matter. I do count. I People do think I'm fun, or whatever, you know,
Yeah.
or you know, or just it really is as simple as people breaking down those walls and just saying, I need help, or do you want to come with me to this, you know, do you want to go on a walk with me, do you want it, just anything. The
Right. And there's a
small
comment here from Cindy. This is a good point she makes. She said, if they hint at suicide, take them seriously. Don't brush it off.
100%. Yeah, yeah,
And I also have read, don't be afraid to talk about it. That,
yeah.
you know, people might think, oh, if I talk about it, that might encourage them to commit suicide, but it doesn't
No,
cause it. You know,
no,
don't be afraid to talk about it. So
no, no.
there is a question here from Chris.
Hmm.
You had talked about your drug issues in the past. Are
Yes.
you still enrolled in any kind of program, like a AA program or anything for
No,
sobriety, or
no.
you've actually gotten through that? And
Yeah, I definitely have gotten past that. I mean, I faced my demons, and it it I it really, oh, how can I put it? I don't know. I mean, I really faced some serious you know, times, and I thought about, you know, what that did to me, and how hard it was for me to even think about those times. And that's kind of what, you know, what keeps me going. And I found something else to put there, you know what I mean? Woodworking. Like you know, my when I was doing drugs, my life was about drugs. That was all there was. And I found something that it keeps me, you know, productive. It keeps me busy. I love it, and it's productive, you know. It
right, you found a
Yeah,
place to really focus your energy. And
yeah. And I
uh,
honestly, I know that a lot of that those groups literally save people's lives, but they're also not for some people like me.
mhm,
You know, it just it wasn't the right thing for me. But I by no means am I saying don't go to those programs. You know, like
sure.
I know for a fact that they have saved people's lives, but also keep your mind open to the fact that it's not for everyone, that there are other avenues.
Right, right. And I know those programs rely a lot on accountability, and
Yeah.
some people need that accountability. It works well for people. It's a great
And
program, and
yeah,
you're kind of accountable to
yeah,
yourself and your wife and your projects that you have there. So
yeah.
I do want to thank several people have spoken up very personally tonight. So I want to acknowledge them and thank them for sharing their stories in the live chat, and Kevin and some others. So just wanted to acknowledge you and thank you for being open in the chat, and the kindness of so many people in the live chat as well.
Yeah.
So um, anything else to wrap up with, John, before we go here tonight? I just am so happy that you spent this time with us.
Well, thank you very much for having me on here. Being invited to these kind of programs and stuff, it really, I love it because it's I don't know why I'm searching for words so much. It's a way for me to help in the way that I feel like I'm still here to help, and I really appreciate that.
Well, I have kind of a catchphrase for my channel that I say, and I truly mean it, that I am really glad you're here. I open almost every video by saying I'm really glad you're here, and that especially applies tonight. And my hope for this program tonight would be that we would help one person, one family. Again, that number on the bottom, that 988, from what I understand, is a new number that was developed nationwide, that anybody can call 988 for a crisis hotline or lifeline, which I think is great.
And always remember that the smallest kindness can save someone's life.
Amen to that. Always be kind. Well, listen, John, you and Annie have a great night. I hope that I get to talk to you again. I want to encourage people to jump on over to TikTok and check out the blind woodsman and see if we can get him over 2 million subscribers. He's like 1.8 something now, which is amazing. And just keep up the great content, and just best wishes for health and happiness to you and to Annie. And keep doing what you're doing, and know that there are literally millions of people out there now, John, who know who you are and who love you and really appreciate what you're doing.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks, everybody. I appreciate you joining me tonight. And this was a very special live stream. I'm glad you were here, and I really look forward to seeing you next time.